everyone. I'm Lucy Gray, as you can see here, and I have my friend Lasse from Finland, and he's going to talk about his organization, 100.org, which is an amazing group that's doing important work around the world. And I had the privilege of attending the 100 Summit right before the pandemic set in 2019, I think. And it was one of the best professional development experiences I've ever had. So I'm really excited for you to learn more about this organization, how you can get involved. We've had a couple organizations that have been partners of us that have gotten recognized by 100. One is Taking It Global, which is had a Connected North project that was recognized as one of their innovations. Another one is World Savvy, who was recognized last year. So I hope more organizations that are participating in Global consider applying to 100, and you'll learn more about it in Lasse's presentation. I'll be here throwing some links into the chat, and I'll let him take over, and here we go. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Lucy. Pleasure to be here, and my big apologies that this was not as smooth as I would have hoped for. My name is Lasse Leponiemi. I'm the co-founder and executive director at 100. I'm calling today in from Geneva, Switzerland, where we are having our 100 implementation center supporting the implementation of education innovations at scale. Briefly in this session, I will talk a little bit about the work we do at 100, and I would hope to keep this interactive, but at least I have no ability to see the chat on this side at the moment. I have some technical challenges on this end, so apologies for those. But let's get going, and if then Lucy or someone else can be helping me out with the potential comments from the chat function, that would be fantastic. I'm intending to talk around 15 to 20 minutes, and I hope you will enjoy this. So the story of 100 started in 2015, 2016, and we were first identifying education innovations in Finland that were supporting the core curriculum that was being established in the primary education in 2016. And how we ended up doing that was actually through the centenary celebrations of Finland. So Finland was turning 100 years old in 2017, and we were thinking with the co-founder Saku Tuominen that it would be great to do something to showcase the Finnish education innovations and how we can kind of like create the Finnish education system and what kind of practices there are behind of its magic. So then we introduced this idea to the Prime Minister's office back in 2015, and eventually we became one of the biggest education-led projects in Finland for the centenary celebration in 2017. And I think that we kind of like failed in a glorious way to do what we promised to do in the beginning, because we never stopped. So in 2016, 2017, we were trying to first identify those Finnish education innovations, and as we were explaining those around the world in different education events with the Finnish government led events, people came to us and were saying that you should really do this also on a global scale. So then in 2018 we announced the first global collection, and since then we have been announcing a global collection of 100 innovations every year. So in the beginning, the name of 100 came from the Finnish centenary celebrations, and now it stands for our global collection, which is always a collection of 100 education innovations that have been reviewed to be impactful and scalable. Few definitions that we should be always talking when we are mentioning innovations. Firstly, innovation as a concept and as a term is very dear for us. And when we are talking about innovations, it's important that we differentiate ideas from innovations. Ideas are something new, something that might work or might not work. most of the new ideas might not be working as intended unless they are iterated multiple times and we are able to really make them to do what we think that we want to achieve through them. Then innovations are more mature, they are more tested, they are more iterated, and they are starting to have this kind of like an established core where you are able to guarantee similar kind of results time after time when you are using those solutions or practices in your education setting or in the education context. Then secondly, so that kind of innovations are the ones that we are trying to identify as 100. They need to be replicable, there needs to be evidence that they work, and they need to have a different kind of scalability factors so that we can use them in different contexts, not only within a one system. And that being said, then the second very important thing is that we always remember that education is contextual. So if we pick something, let's say from here, from Switzerland, and we try to take it, let's say, to a neighboring country, France, for example, most likely we have to be adapting that innovation or that solution or practice for that new context. It's very rarely that the innovation would work as it is in a new context. Often some kind of adaptation is needed. And when we talk about how innovations can be scaled, the ones that have enough adaptability and flexibility are the ones that can survive in different systems. And when saying that they survive in different systems, we also mean that they have, like, I often kind of like define or describe the innovation in different kind of circles. So there is like the very core of the innovation. It's the pedagogical core, how the innovation works and how it produces its results in different kind of learning settings. And then around that pedagogical core, you have that second layer, and that's the layer you can adapt. So you are not adapting the ways how the innovation helps the learners in something that it does, but you are able to adapt the ways how it fits, for example, to a lesson plans, how it fits to a curriculum and so forth. And while we are doing our research work, there are two factors we are especially looking at. One of them is scalability, and that exactly looks into those ways that these innovations can be used in different contexts and what kind of things can benefit with that one. And then the second criteria is impact. And with the impact, we want to always see at least 1 year of evidence and data how the innovation, the solution or practice is affecting the learning outcomes of young people or the professional development of teachers, or depending like what is the focus area of this innovation. And while we have been doing this work around the world, these days we have an education innovation database with more than 5,000 entries. Out of those, 3,200 and then some are publicly available at 100.org. For us, it's kind of like one of the key aspects of the work we are doing is to identify these solutions. If Lucy could be dropping in, for example, the link to 100 Global Collection 2024 to the chat, that would be fantastic. That is the global collection that was announced 1.5 weeks ago in Helsinki, and it features 100 innovations we think are worth of watching for the next year. There are some key trends that I want to highlight. Firstly, many of these innovations are the trending topic within these innovations were AI, surprise. So ChatGPT, different kind of artificial intelligence and how it can be used in education context were involved in many of the submissions that we were receiving during the last year. Then secondly, there was also a very this kind of like underlining and continuing trend on teacher professional development and how to build the teacher competencies in different contexts and different environments. And we were seeing this one merging already in 2020, 2021, and that trend has been now continuing for good 4 years almost. How we are able to equip teachers with different kind of skills and skill sets that they might be needing, especially when using new kind of pedagogical approaches, and how those new kind of pedagogical approaches can be, for example, combined with online or hybrid learning, and how that hybrid and online learning is there for to stay. And especially if we are looking at the global picture of education and how education is shaping up at the moment after pandemia, we are seeing that we have actually doubled, for example, the teacher gap in the education industry. We have even bigger gap in funding in primary education than we were having before the pandemia years. Plus, we have some conflicts around the world that are affecting the learning of millions of young people, combined with some other kind of environmental and other issues that are not provide, which are kind of like which are not helping to provide access to education for all the young people that would deserve it. And these are a few of the key challenges that these kind of innovations are trying to solve, as we are seeing them in our database at the moment. Then the third kind of like a trending topic, or actually decreasing topic, which surprised me a little bit seeing the results, was well-being related innovations, especially in 21, 2020. There were a lot of them, but now it seemed like that the big boom that came with AI was a little bit pushing them to the side. However, I believe, and looking at the education sector as it is today, the need of those well-being solution practices have not been disappearing anywhere, especially when we are facing different kind of global challenges that are affecting to all of us, but especially for the children who are going through those fundamental years of personal growth and getting those different skills that they very much need in life. The importance of social emotional learning is extremely high, in my opinion, at the moment, and I hope that we would be seeing that trend continue when we are looking the ways how different education providers are equipping, education systems are equipping the young people for the future. When we and then it's kind of like relatively easy to talk about innovations and how we can, through research, identify different kind of trends and things that we find important. But what is actually far more challenging and far more challenging and far more also complex is how we can then implement these innovations where we see a lot of value at scale. So it's once again relatively easy to implement one innovation in a one school which is having enough resources, enough staff, and good student body, and then they can be trying out something new. But how we are able to do this on a system level where we should be influencing in a positive way hundreds or thousands of schools, and how this kind of new innovations or new solution practices can be introduced to these kind of systems so that they are not facing too much change resistance, and also that those systems are able to select innovations that are fit for purpose. For sure, not every innovation is fit for every purpose. We have to be able to identify also those solutions from the education provider's point of view, that what is needed to make the system flourish and help every child flourish as well. And that has been a very important topic for us at 100 during the last 18 months. We started the work to establish the 100 Implementation Center here in Geneva back in 2022. with the support of Jacobs Foundation. And then during the last 12 months, we have been publishing 2 reports. One is called Implement at Scale, where we are setting up a research agenda, how we can understand what kind of benefiting and preventing factors there are to support this kind of implementation that happens within the systems. And we have been also walking that talk during the last month. So we have had 3 massive implementation processes. For example, one of them is in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh area, where we have been following 21 school districts that have been implementing parental engagement solutions. But we have been also doing some experimenting with the Helsinki Education Division, which is the biggest education provider in Finland, how to bring, for example, Indian and UK innovations and adapt them to the Finnish context and to the Finnish curriculum. And if you want to read more about these, you can head to 100.org and find these reports from our reports section. And find out yourself what kind of insights there have been within that process. And I think, like, if I would need to summarize or highlight one thing that is extremely important, is that we should always build dialogue between the different stakeholders and partners when we want to implement something. And that's especially important, like how do we bring in the teachers and principals who should be part of the first bunch of the schools who are going to implement something. Our experience is that in the processes and with the education providers who have been having this kind of like a very detailed alignment phase to discuss with the teachers and principals, also with the parents and students, how they find these potential solutions, the results have been much better. And this, of course, is very much aligned with the Rogers innovation diffusion theory, where in the beginning of the curve, you have to find those early adopters who are very much willing and motivated to test out and try out new things. And the best way to identify them and make them to be excited about the things that we believe are able to provide improved learning opportunities for the students is to have those discussions to really understand what are their needs and then to answer those needs. It's not rocket science from that point of view, but very often we might skip those very important discussions in the beginning because we are so excited to try out something new that we have identified and which we think that can be fit for the system. And now what is going to happen next as we are on this journey to identify new ways and new opportunities to implement innovations at scale, is that we are hoping to start a few more these kind of implementation processes. So if you are interested hearing more about that kind of opportunities, please contact us. We are happy to discuss. And then secondly, we announced at the 100 Innovation Summit 1.5 weeks ago that we are also going to establish a 100 Foundation here in Switzerland. And the aim together with the implementation center is that we are hoping that we are able to provide further resourcing for education innovations that are being implemented at scale in different contexts. There will be more information coming about that in the beginning of next year as we are moving forward with these plans. And something that I want to conclude this talk is that I want to first of all say thank you for everyone who is innovating and who is being part of these this kind of like a development discussions in education sector. There is never enough of us, and something that we have been experiencing firsthand through our community of people like you is that we are far more alike than we are different. In different contexts, in different corners of the world, we are often trying to solve very similar kind of learning challenges with our students. But of course, there is always the contextuality that then dictates how those kind of like challenges or opportunities are seen, and what kind of solutions or what kind of possibilities we have to cover them. And then secondly and finally, I want to wish you all very excellent and nice conference experience. And apologies from my behalf about the technical challenges in the beginning, and I hope that you were able to get something out of this. Now, if there are any questions, I'm very happy to answer to those. If Lucy can jump to the
Yeah.
stage as well.
I'll throw a question at you. So if we have an organization listening to this and they want to be part of 100 and be considered, the criteria is scalability. That's a big factor. It's the stability of the program if it's been refined and iterated on. How would they go about, how competitive is it to get to be in the collection, and how would they go about, what's the application process like?
Yes, so if you want to be considered for the 100 Global Collection 2025, the best way to do that is to head to our website 100.org, and you can click the Innovations tab on the top navigation.
Yeah.
And when you are clicking that one, there is create an innovation page link. And that's the way how you can be entering the information about your organization and the work you are doing within the sector. I would encourage you to go through few innovation pages by yourself from our existing collections to first like check how those innovation pages have been made by other organizations, and then just type in, and you can save the draft, you can come back to it, and you can kind of like finalize it when you feel ready. And then of course remember to publish it so that we can take it into account when we are doing the reviews. How competitive it is? Last year we did 6,000 individual innovation reviews. So now you can do the quick math. So there are multiple reviews always on a one innovation. So it usually means that when, for example, when we are considering an innovation to a global collection or to a thematic spotlight collections, we do with our partners, there is usually between 15 to 30 reviews on a one innovation. And that's the way how we are able to then check how impactful or scalable that innovation could potentially be, not only its own context, but also in different countries, in different systems. As the 100 academy members who are doing those reviews are education consultants, they are principals, they are teachers, they are other education stakeholders, education providers, who are then helping us to review the innovations. For example, for this year's collection, we had 600 shortlisted innovations, and out of them, we created a shortlist, which was around 180 innovations. And then out of those 180 innovations, then eventually 100 were selected. So we have this kind of like a funnel model, so that we are kind of like checking that different criteria is on its place, and then based on that one, the decisions are being made. So it doesn't help that you are sending a bucket of roses to our research director to our office, because eventually it's always the academy members who are doing the reviews.
So it's a really rigorous process, and that's great. So it ensures that there's quality in terms of what you're presenting.
Yes, and the model follows the Nesta standards loosely. So it's built based on the Nesta standards, like how you can evaluate innovations in education context, and if there is also a section on our website which is all about research. So if you want to kind of like really tap into the different criteria we are having for the selections, you can do that one as well. Also, the research reports can be very helpful for that one, especially to implement at scale, and messy middle one where we are explaining, for example, like, I know it's not maybe like, I wouldn't say like don't submit your innovations just to submit new innovation, I think like do it, because you can also learn a lot in the
Yeah.
process. So when you are
Mhm.
doing that one, it's alteration of a human-centered design process. So what many innovators say after the process is that they actually learned something new about the work they have been doing for many years, because we ask questions that you might not hear otherwise. And those
Yeah.
questions can be very, very helpful to answer as a part of the application process, because then when you are meeting, let's say, a funder, or you are looking
Yeah.
for investment for your organization, you have been actually answering those questions that they are asking from you through the process
So it's
that you are
preparing
doing
you for
with
so
us.
many other contexts. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yes.
So one of the things I remember from attending the summit in Helsinki in 2019 was that there was some sort of for the people who were selected, there was a funding source or kind of a backdoor community for them to interact with funders and get more feedback. Is that part of the process still going too?
Uh, yes. So I think you are referring to 100 Connect, and the 100
Yeah.
Connect is something that when you are having an innovation, when you are logged into our platform, then you are able to connect with the other community members who are part of the platform as well. So it has changed a little bit after those
Okay.
years, because I think it was 2019 or when the first version of that one was kind of like
Yeah.
introduced. And these days, if when you are having your 100 account, you log into a system, you are able to see, for example, a world map where you can put all our ambassadors or innovators on that map, and you can find information about them if they are willing to share that information with others. So it's a so what we often hear, for example, is that like might be an innovator or community member who is, let's say, planning to experiment their product or service in a country. So then they can find a person through that community, which can be the first, connection in
Okay.
that country, and find maybe a school or something where they can experiment or test bed their solution a little bit, and just to get a feel of it. So I kind of like encourage people to use those opportunities that are which are available through the platform and through the community. And our community is not like it's not like tens of thousands people.
Yeah.
It's more like 1,200 ambassadors who are all very passionate about the education innovations, and they are there uh, ready to help and support if they can in their own context.
Yeah, and there's some amazing ambassadors out there. I'm an ambassador, but there's some ones that are really doing a lot of work on this front. So there's ways for um, there are ways for educators to get involved in helping 100. One is being an ambassador. There's student ambassadors. There's also the academy that does the vetting. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, about how people could get involved on an individual basis if they're not necessarily putting in an innovation?
Gladly. So the 100 community is an open community for everyone who are passionate about education innovations. And there are different levels. So you can become a 100 ambassador, and that means that you are part of the community. You will be getting invitations to different events that we organize. Those might be online, or those might be in person. And then, of course, you can also organize an event as a 100 ambassador. We can
Mhm.
support you in that one. Uh, and 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 that's a very good way to kind of like start creating relationship within the 100 community. Then the 100 ambassador community is led by 100 community leads. And Lucy, you might be remembering that these were called 100 country leads earlier. But
Yes,
we
yes.
realized that the community has been growing so much that we need to have more like a regional and then a thematic approach to kind of like be able to serve the demands and needs of our community.
Okay.
And actually, you, Lucy, you could be sending your application to a community lead position if
Sure.
you are interested in that one. So we are now looking for 10 to 15 community leads to join us on that journey, starting from the beginning of next year. And there
Okay.
is a catch, because then the community leads will be provided an access to the Innovation Summit once during their 2-year term. And we will cover the accommodation, for example, for them. So
Oh, nice.
that we want to be more engaged with our community leads as well. And
And
then
I the students were so impressive at the summit. Your student ambassadors.
yes, and we have the 100 Youth Ambassador program, which is then done in a collaboration with IP School Network, and the next cohort is starting in January, and the application period actually will be open very soon. So if you have students that who are interested in this kind of like a social projects, and they are excited about education, that might be something that they could find very much valuable. And we are taking 300 students to the next cohort, and we are not able to accommodate everyone who is wanting to be part of it, but at least we can get 300 like 2 times a year, so 600 altogether during 1 year.
Wow, that's a lot of kids.
It's a lot
It's
of
amazing.
kids, yes.
Yeah. So there are lots of opportunities for people to get involved and be part of this effort. And I hope people that are listening to this will consider getting involved. I had another question for you, and I'm really impressed with your growth. I mean, it feels like a lot has happened, with this. Oh, I know what it was I was going to ask you about. So you also recognize some of the people who've been super involved with 100 over the years. And one of the more interesting pieces of work, I think, has been in Pittsburgh with Greg Bear and the Grable Foundation and his work. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in Pittsburgh, go into detail a little bit about that, about how they've approached innovation in general? It's super interesting to me.
Yeah, it's a long journey we have had with the Grable Foundation and Remake Learning Network and Kidsburg, who have been, and together with these organizations, we have been first doing 100 spotlight on Pittsburgh. So we were
Yeah.
identifying education innovations from Pittsburgh area, and it was like a mini beginning of 100, like where we were identifying those 100 Finnish innovations. So it felt a little bit the same. So we were able to kind of like really pick solutions and organizations that were serving the community in Pittsburgh in a very good and nice way. And then after that, we were doing this kind of like a remake learning across US tour with them. So we were kind of like showcasing those solutions together with the Remake Learning Network across the US. And then that eventually led to a parental engagement implementation process. So during the COVID years, we were seeing that there were a lot of parental involvement in education all over the world, and we were kind of like figuring out like, okay, like we are seeing a lot of interesting things
Mhm.
happening. The school communities are coming really together to kind of like to to be able to provide those learning
Mhm.
opportunities despite the challenges we are seeing all around us. So we decided to create this parental or together with the Grable Foundation to create this Parents as Allies group of organizations, and it involves the Remake Learning, Kidsburg, but also Brookings. IDEO was part of it earlier, and
Mhm.
so forth. And now together with the Learning Heroes, we have been then actually implementing some parental engagement hacks or solutions in the Pittsburgh school districts. And the results of those implementations are coming out within a couple of weeks, actually. So we have been
Wow.
collecting implementation journeys since the last spring. With them, it's 21 school districts. I hope that I don't lie too much if I say like 2.5 million students were
Wow.
involved, or they were studying
That's
in the
scalable.
areas of those school districts. So it's a lot, So it's uh, and uh, I think, I was mentioning that one of the key success factors have been able to have good and in-depth dialogues with the different stakeholders, and I think that's kind of like the key to the success. What we are seeing in Pittsburgh region at the moment.
Mhm.
So we are more a facilitator, and someone who is able to see and collect data and impact results from them, but the actual work that the teams at the school districts and the Kidsburg people together with Learning Heroes and others have been doing. That's just like amazing. Like it's so great
Yeah.
to see that kind of engagement and involvement taking place.
In a large urban district where, I think in the US, a lot of big districts have been very top down. I'm making generalizations here, but they've been top down. They've been somewhat dysfunctional in general in terms of really addressing inequities. And so, to kind of turn that model on its head and go to the people you're serving and ask for their input and their involvement is refreshing. And so that I think that's really interesting. I also like the emphasis for Remake Learning too on informal learning and working with community partners. And it's everybody that's involved. It's not just the schools, it's community partners, it's the parents, it's everyone. And
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
like the
think,
saying goes, it takes a village. It
yes,
takes a
and it's not
village,
rocket
or it
science.
takes a
It's not rocket
Pittsburgh in
science.
this case, I guess.
Yeah. I also wonder here in the US if we're going to have kind of a backlash too because of all the parental negative involvement that's been happening. And if schools are at least where I am tend to kind of keep parents at arm's length because they're stressed out and worried about parents being a negative influence. And so we have a lot of challenges here in terms of
Yeah,
how we approach that.
something that I remember fondly from one of the discussions we were having, and I think it might have like it might be actually a very important sentence, that you can only move with the speed of trust when you are working
Yeah.
with the parents. So
Yeah.
kind of like everything begins with the trust, and the trust needs to be going both ways. So that, and I think like this kind of like a secret source, if any, that
Mhm.
the Princess Allies group was having, was first to create a lot of opportunities to come together, to share the same room, have discussions, informal, and kind of like making the people to know each other. And when you know each other, it's so much easier then to
Yes.
start kind of like also to move into those more formal discussion and formative discussions, how you can kind of like then shape the education opportunities together with the guardians and the parents.
So you're building that basis for a relationship and then doing the work. And I also think about people who I've known throughout my long life here, um, who have, they see their objective is to educate their community too. So a couple examples would be, I'm thinking of Pam Moran, who used to be a superintendent in Albemarle County, Virginia, and she would educate her board. She did a lot of work with her board on what they should be looking at, how they should be looking at things. And I think that's what a good leader does. The other thing too that I love here in Illinois is something called the Family Action Network. And because of the pandemic now, they do a bunch of lectures around parenting, education, all sorts of topics. And it used to be just in person, but then the pandemic forced them to go online. So everything's online now. And that kind of convening of bringing people together on things has been, I think, pretty powerful where we are. And I wish, I think you have to continually think about how you're communicating, how you're educating, how you're bringing people along with you in your journey to innovate. And it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. And so I love hearing stories about how this is done. And I don't think it's rocket science. I think it's just making the time and the space for it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that one. So, and I think like the key is like I have been repeating, it's to have like those dialogues, have the space, time, resourcing, and then also like something that we learned when we did the study with the Finnish National Agency for Education,
Yeah.
how the new curriculum was established in Finland. So you kind of like you need to have um, direction, like what is the new curriculum, what are the new things, so what are the old things that you need to have in the school.
Lead.
But
Yeah.
then you have to also have values, so that you are able to kind of like explain why these things matter for us. Why do we want to bring, let's say, social emotional learning, or why do we want to have like computational thinking? Why these are important from the value perspective as well. And then thirdly, there is the trust component. So and the trust needs to go always both ways. And then those three things need leadership in order to succeed. And in a way, especially when we are doing changes, the leadership needs to create this kind of like an umbrella for people who are kind of like implementing and trying out new things, because
Yeah.
not everything will work from the beginning. It needs
And that's okay.
iterations. It's okay, but then when the first things are, I don't want to say that they are failures. They are something where we are learning from, and then we are able to
Yeah.
iterate further.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when those things happen for the first time, then we are starting to get always those counter arguments that like, hey, why are we even doing this? The old ways were working better, and la 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 la. And it's always
Yeah.
like that. So when we are trying something new, our performance first drops. And when we master the new skills and competencies, only then we are able to get to a next level. And this can be often kind of like forgotten. So we are kind of somehow expecting that, somebody drops that magical new innovation to our classroom, and then we think that tomorrow everything will be better. But very rarely that is the case. But it will take a month, 2 or 3. Even like if you think about like forming a new habit, usually takes like close to 90 days. So if
Yeah.
you are kind of like, as an educator, you have to allow yourself that time, that it's okay that I'm learning this new thing now. And as a policymaker, it should be also allowed, like it's okay, we are learning to do things differently. It's gonna take time, but we believe it's gonna be better. And that's something that we should keep in mind.
Yeah, that's been a theme in the conference so far, is that these things take time. That's been a huge theme that we've heard from people, like in terms of global citizenship, education, and things like that. We had a great conversation last night with some researchers and policymakers on that topic, and that was definitely part of the theme. And one of the things, just as a FYI, this conference is focused on educational innovation and global education. So there's an emphasis on the SDGs and global citizenship and all that. Um, and one of the things that has come out, and I've heard this for years, is there are a lot of small organizations that are looking for funding and they don't know where to go. So in Europe, you might be able to get Erasmus Plus money for this kind of work, or there seems to be sources of funding there. In the US, there really isn't. So everybody's kind of looking for funding, who's funding what, who's doing what, and there's no answers. So if you got that funder aspect, if you ever expand into doing more with that, I think that would be a conversation, and or at least not even a conversation, it'd be more than a conversation, but people would really be intrigued by that. That's been another
Yeah,
theme
and
that's
and
kind
and
of come
and, and,
through.
and we hope to be able to move into that direction, because how I'm seeing the sector at the moment, we have a huge gap, how we are able to provide further resourcing for the classroom practices and solutions at the moment. So many of these big good funding initiatives that we are having in place at the moment, they always go from these big multilaterals to the governments, and then through the governments they are kind of like going to the ministries, and from ministries they are going to school districts, and then eventually something will be ending up to the schools as well. But then we are kind of like often lacking an instrument or a way how we could boost or accelerate something that is starting to emerge or is already starting to scale, because that scaling always takes resourcing. And
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
we are, and that kind of like resourcing needs to be available also quite quickly. We have been seeing cases where there has been, for example, promising innovations, and which are then starting that scaling phase. But if they don't have resources to resource themselves, there might be innovator burnouts, there might be like other kind of like operational and cash flow challenges. So
Yeah.
those are the things that we should take into account. And sometimes the big education providers, whether they are public or private, do not understand how thin the resources might be with their sub providers, whether they are learning content providers or they are providing some
Mhm.
tools or assets for the schools, that they we need to be able to do also that kind of things together. And I'm hoping that we would be able to get some additional resources available for innovators around the world.
Yeah,
And
that's
let's see
great. That's
if we are
wonderful. Yeah.
if we succeed in that one, you will be the first people to
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Okay. That's good to know. Yeah. And I think here in the US, I don't know if anybody's talked about this at the summit or anything, but in the US, there's been money from the government for COVID that has been able to be spent pretty flexibly, and the last wave of it in particular, and that wave that set of money has to be spent by September 2024. So my understanding is that a lot of schools have paid for teachers and extra personnel with that money, and so it's going to go away. And then what happens? So there's this big kind of fiscal cliff that's coming, and people are
Mm-hmm.
worried about what the implications are for things. And I think schools are just starting to think about innovating again post COVID. So it's going to be kind of a perfect storm here in terms of what
Yeah,
resources are available
yeah,
to people.
yeah, and I also believe that kind of like a creative destruction, if you will be also seen elsewhere, because also what we are seeing at the moment is that we are somewhere like in a the inflation has been rising, and the recession is
Yeah.
looming, among us at the moment. So what that means is that the foundations that are often supporting the education sector locally or internationally, most likely we will be getting less money to be spent for the education programs, which then kind of like will there will be this kind of like a double cliff. So this kind of like project money allocations that have been given by governments will be ending all over the world during the
Yikes.
next 12 months, or they have already ended. And then simultaneously there will be even a further this kind of like a drop coming
Yeah.
from the foundation side to the education sector. And if I remember something from the UN General Assembly in New York last
Yeah.
September, also the World Bank CEO was saying that the primary education funding globally has been going down 17%.
Wow.
If we compare the numbers today to the numbers we were having in 2019.
Oh
So
my
the
gosh.
picture
It's
is
a
kind of
global
like
problem.
having, yeah, it's a global problem, and it's also global kind of like opportunity, like how we are then able to use some new kind of solution practices, for example, especially in the low resource contexts, because before COVID we were talking that we need 19 million new teachers. Today the number is 44 million, because so
Wow.
many teachers left as there were no social security, no nothing during the time of pandemia. So of course they have to do something where they can get money for the families and for their own needs.
Mhm.
So but they haven't returned back. And I think like this kind of like a ground shaking experience for me was to discuss with Rwandi's teacher uh, during the summer, when she explained that they have a school that is kind of like made for 600 students, and they were having close to
Mhm.
1,800. They were having half of the staff available. So every now and then, for example, she was having a group of 300 second graders, and we all know who have been with the second graders. That's gonna be quite loud, loud room for
I
to
can't
be working with.
imagine.
So
I thought
Yeah.
I had
So
35 first graders, as a first grade teacher. I can't imagine 100 times that number. Oh my goodness. Wow.
yeah, but
Well, it's the
perfect.
top of the
Hey,
hour, and I want to make sure that you get on to. I know you're busy, and I just want to thank you so much for spending time with us today. This has been really insightful. I keep on singing hundreds praises to everybody I meet because I think the summit was such a valuable experience, and I think this documentation of innovations is really crucial. Everybody can learn from what you guys are doing, and it's so impressed with how you're growing. So thank you for being here. It's great.
thank you. This was a pleasure.
Okay. We'll send you the recording and thanks for everything. We'll talk soon. Have a good day, everyone. On to the next sessions. Bye bye.